Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. Lori Vallow Daybell remains incompetent to stand trial as Chad Daybell's children claim he's been framed. The latest on the Doomsday duo. And R. Kelly's former assistant testifies. The singer would dish out harsh punishments to his girlfriends and employees. Plus, the words from the mother of college student Mollie Tibbetts to the man convicted of murdering her daughter.
Because of your act, Mr. Rivera, I will never get to see my daughter become a mother.
And Robert Durst's eerie reaction when confronted about dismembering his neighbor. The real estate heir telling a jury he drank a bottle of whiskey, then used saws and an axe to chop up Morris Black's body.
That is my testimony.
Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law&Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. Doomsday mom Lori Vallow Daybell remains incompetent to stand trial for now, as her husband's children are speaking out, claiming he was framed. But first, to R. Kelly's trial and the stunning new allegations against the singer. The fourth employee of the disgraced king of R&B testified in the 9th day of R. Kelly's sex trafficking trial, describing Kelly's harsh rules and punishment, as well as a time women were punished for twerking for cake. Suzette Mayweather, Kelly's assistant from October 2015 to February 2017, testified that on R. Kelly's January 4th, 2016 birthday party, he ordered women to get on each other or fight because he did not like that they were twerking for cake. Mayweather testified that while she did not see any fights, she did hear laughing, screaming, and thumping from the studio above. Mayweather told the jury about her former boss's anger and how he would dish out punishment to employees and girlfriends. That she and Kelly got into such an argument about speaking with one of his girlfriends about the relationship, something Kelly forbade, that she lied about who started the conversation out of fear of what would happen to the girlfriend. And that one of Kelly's girlfriends came to her crying, showing her a mark on her butt from where she claimed Rob spanked her. Mayweather corroborated Kelly's strict rules and employees and girlfriends and said that Kelly got angry, and it wasn't the tone, but the look in his eyes. Joining us today is former prosecutor Melba Pearson, along with Terry Austin. Melba, what do you think of the order in which the prosecution is presenting witnesses? How are they presenting the case overall?
I think they're doing a good job overall. I think that especially when you're dealing with something that's so sensitive, you got to grab the jury right out the gate, right? It's that theory of primacy and recency. Jurors remember the first thing they hear and the last thing they hear. So it's really important to put the two strongest parts of your case in the beginning and in the end to make sure you're holding the jurors' attention. So by starting with the survivors, talking about what they experienced, now that laid the foundation. And then now the prosecution added another layer with the employees that are now corroborating everything that the victim said. So that emotional punch is there. And then now you have the corroboration to really boost up the truthfulness of what they're saying. So I think they're doing this in a good fashion. I'm very curious to see what their recency is or the last part of their case that they'll be presenting to make sure that it's impactful.
So true. I've sat in the court for at least 4 of the 9 days. I wish I could show people what's happening, but of course we can't put videos in a federal court system. Terry, Mayweather doesn't seem to be part of the criminal enterprise for the RICO charge. So what is her testimony giving to the trial?
Well, I do think Mayweather is contributing to the RICO charge. Remember, the racketeering is an enterprise here. And one of the things she said is that he angered easily, that he controlled the girls, that he scared them, that he beat them until they actually got scars on their, rears. And so I definitely think that she is showing that he is controlling all of his employees to support this enterprise and to support his brand.
Definitely a lot of corroborating testimony there from a number of R. Kelly's employees. We'll make sure to continue with coverage of the U.S. v. R. Kelly trial. Thank you both. Turning now to our other top story, the latest on the Doomsday duo. Chad Daybell's children are now insisting he's too smart to have buried his wife's 2 children in his own backyard. Chad Daybell is facing a slew of charges in connection to the murder of his first wife, Tammy Daybell, along with the murder of J.J. Vallow and Tylee Ryan, the children of his current wife, Lori Vallow Daybell. Lori is also charged in the murders, but is deemed incompetent to stand trial for now. Investigators have said the couple was preparing for an end-of-the-world scenario and wanted to rid the world of zombies and the human bodies they inhabit. Now, Chad Daybell's 5 children are speaking out publicly, revealing they were told their mother, Tammy, died from asphyxiation. In an interview with CBS's 48 Hours, Chad's children say their father was previously a gravedigger and do not believe he is the one that buried JJ and Tylee in shallow graves on his own property.
Did your father, Chad Daybell, play any role in killing JJ and Tylee?
No. It's completely unthinkable.
How is it possible 2 children are found buried in your father's backyard and he had nothing to do with it?
He was framed.
Attorneys for Lori Vallow Daybell appeared in court virtually on Monday. Lori Daybell is currently in a psychiatric hospital and will remain there until at least the next week, when the judge will decide if she'll remain there for treatment.
I wouldn't consider them a progress report. I think we need a progress report before an order extending the commitment would be entered. So I was just asking, does the state agree that before extension of a commitment, we would need to see the progress report to satisfy the statute?
Yes, the state does agree.
All right, Mr. Means, Mr. Archibald, do you also wish to have a progress report in hand before the determination on a extension of the commitment?
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I don't think we could test the idea of continued commitment, but a progress report, I think, would assist with the matter for all parties.
Terry, based off of what Chad Daybell's children are now saying, are you sensing a new defense strategy?
Well, I think it is slightly new here. Initially, it did seem as though Chad was going to say that they are both innocent. But I think he might be pointing the finger at Lori and even Alex. He could very well say that Lori was mentally ill and she directed Alex to kill the children. And of course, we know Alex died in December 2019 and he cannot be tried. And if she's mentally ill, she will be protected for a certain extent if the prosecution isn't able to show that she had intent. And so I think it's a win-win for all of the defendants if he sort of points the finger at Alex and Lori and tries to say one was mentally ill, she didn't know what she was doing, the other is now gone, and of course, I had nothing to do with it.
I think that's a creative and interesting defense, one that I think it's the only one that he can really argue that might get him from out from under this. Of course, we'll continue to follow that case as he stands trial on his own. And again, Lori Vallow Daybell is still incompetent to stand trial, at least for now. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, jury selection begins in Elizabeth Holmes' federal fraud trial. Plus, a bottle of Jack, an axe, and a bow saw. How Robert Durst explains he chopped up his neighbor's body. Hear the real estate's laugh when confronted with his own testimony next.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law and Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law and Crime Network with YouTube TV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTube TV today and then locate Law and Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTube TV. We put you in the jury box.
Welcome back. The jury selection is now underway in the highly anticipated trial of Elizabeth Holmes, the former Theranos CEO accused of defrauding investors of millions and scamming doctors and patients. Elizabeth Holmes is facing 12 charges of wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud at her now defunct startup. Holmes falsely promised that Theranos developed a blood test that only required a prick of blood. In newly unsealed court documents, Holmes' attorneys indicate she's likely to take the stand in her own defense and accuse her ex-boyfriend and Theranos CEO, Ramesh Sunny Balwani, of psychological, emotional, and sexual abuse. Attorneys will narrow down a pool of nearly 200 prospective jurors to select 12 that will decide her fate. Now to California for the trial of Robert Durst and how apparently the next key piece of evidence is a bottle of Jack Daniel's whiskey. Robert Durst has been on the stand for nearly 3 weeks, proclaiming his innocence and trying to explain what he thinks happened to his best friend, Susan Berman. Durst is accused of killing Berman in their Benedict Canyon home in December of 2000. Previously, Durst was on trial for killing his neighbor, Morris Black. Durst was acquitted for the murder, claiming self-defense, but was found guilty of dismembering him and dumping him in Galveston Bay. In previous testimony, Durst explained that he drank a large amount of whiskey before chopping up Morris Black's body with an axe and bone saw.
Mr. Durst, this is a fifth of Jack Daniels whiskey, correct? Is that correct, Mr. Durst?
I assume so.
Well, examine it if you want. Take a look.
I don't need to examine it.
Well, this is a fifth of Jack Daniels, correct?
Correct.
Mr. Durst, is there any way, are you telling this jury that you believe you could have ingested that amount of liquor and then dismembered a corpse with saws and an axe? Is that your testimony?
That is my testimony.
Then Lewin questioned him about the gun and the many rounds of ammunition found in Durst's possession when he was arrested for Morris Black's murder. When Durst said he was planning on killing himself, Lewin quickly jumped to how that didn't add up.
You agree, Mr. Durst, that what you did have in the glove box was a fully loaded .38, correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Durst, you previously said that you had this gun because you were thinking about killing yourself. Is that correct?
Correct.
How many rounds does it take for someone to kill themselves?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No, I don't know.
Are you aware, Mr. Durst, of people killing themselves by firing one shot into their head, waiting a while, firing another shot? Did you need 39 rounds of hollow point .38 ammo to kill yourself, Mr. Durst?
No.
So why did you have 40 rounds of ammo minimum in that car?
I assume they came with a gun.
Back with us is former prosecutor Melba Pearson and Terry Austin. Terry, what do you think the point of challenging Durst about whether or not he drank a fifth of whiskey?
Here is the point, and it's a good point. Lewin is establishing the fact that all Durst does is lie, whether or not it's when he was interviewed with the authorities or when he was interviewed by Jarecki or by Lewin himself, or even the other day at trial. Lewin is trying to say that you lie about everything. So he's trying to say there's no way you could have had this whole bottle of whiskey, walked back and forth to your apartment, chopped up a body, and still be standing on your feet. The best part of that testimony, though, was that evil laugh, and I think the jury took note of that.
Yeah, definitely a laugh. Half of me thought that Durst was about to open up the bottle of Jack and sip it just to make sure it wasn't another brown liquid, because that's definitely up Durst's alley. Melba, Durst may not be off the stand after the cross-examination. Do you think his lawyers will try to rehabilitate what was said on, redirect?
I don't think they have a choice, because he came off so badly that they need to do something to try to place in the jurors' minds that, this is going back to the thought of he's a feeble old man. He, look at him. Does he look like somebody that could, murder someone and, that sort of thing. So I think they're going to do their best. Now, do I think the redirect is going to be effective? No. Because again, we went way too far down the rabbit hole with, many of his admissions and weird comments that he made, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, that opens up the door to recross, which I'm sure Lewin will jump on with all vigor and joy. So, I would say for them, short redirect, 2 or 3 questions and sit down.
Yeah, I don't think any questioning of Robert Durst will be short, but Melba, I'm hoping that your words reach someone with power to make it short. We'll see how that plays out. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, how a witness's prior drug use can be help for the defense for the arson trial. But first, sentencing for the murder of college student Mollie Tibbetts. How much time her convicted killer will spend behind bars after the break. We're back. The man convicted of murdering Iowa college student Mollie Tibbetts is sentenced, but not before hearing from Tibbetts' mother. Law and Crime's Anjanette Levy has the story.
Mollie Tibbetts' mother, Laura Calderwood, wrote a letter to the court. She chose not to read it. Instead, a victim's advocate read it for her.
Mollie was a young woman who simply wanted to go for a quiet run on the evening of July 18th, and you chose to violently and statistically end that life.
Mollie Tibbetts' mother, Laura Calderwood, sat in the gallery as her words were read. She described how she told her family, including Mollie's grandmother, that Mollie was dead.
Judy truly believed her granddaughter would be found alive, because Who could harm such a beautiful, vibrant young woman?
Calderwood also described what was taken from those who loved Mollie.
Because of your act, Mollie's father, Rob, will never get to walk his only daughter down the aisle. Because of your act, Mr. Rivera, I will never get to see my daughter become a mother.
Investigators said Bahena Rivera led them to a cornfield near Brooklyn, Iowa, where Mollie's body was found under corn stalks. Bahena Rivera claimed at trial that two masked men killed Tibbetts and forced him to drive to the cornfield where he left her body. But prosecutors said Bahena Rivera confessed to arguing with Tibbetts, hiding her body in the field, her blood found in the trunk of his car.
Mr. Bahena Rivera is going to be sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And I would tell the court that based upon the facts and circumstances of this case, it is very well deserved.
Mollie Tibbetts was a beautiful young woman who defense attorneys acknowledged was a genuinely nice person who didn't have problems with anyone.
Do you have anything you wish to say to me prior to my announcing what I'm going to do here today?
No, thank you.
Judge Joel Yates didn't have any discretion in sentencing. It was mandatory that he receive life without parole.
Mr. Bahena Rivera, you and you alone forever changed the lives of those who love Mollie Tibbetts.
Judge Yates's words were important because at the end of the trial, a woman and an inmate came forward and said that two other men admitted to killing Mollie Tibbetts. Bahena Rivera's attorneys used that information to try to get a new trial, but Judge Yates denied that request, saying it simply didn't line up with the evidence. For Law and Crime Daily, I'm Anjanette Levy.
When we come back, did one of the victims of this deadly house fire suspect something was going on all along? The accused arsonist on trial and why a witness was asked to install security cameras on one side of the house. Next. Welcome back. An Ohio man is now on trial for the murders of 9 people. Prosecutors say he set deadly fires over grudges towards his neighbors. Stanley Ford is accused of setting 3 fires in his residential neighborhood in Akron, Ohio. 9 people were killed, including an entire family and their dog. If convicted, Ford could face the death penalty. Ford originally stood trial last March, but a mistrial was declared due to the pandemic. The first fire was set to the home of Lindell Lewis and Gloria Jean Hart in April 2016. The couple was killed in the blaze. Months earlier, Lewis hired his friend Taryn Sibley to install security cameras. Sibley says Lewis was suspicious that his neighbor, the defendant, broke a window pane to his front door.
He wanted me to install some security cameras on his house.
Where he wants those cameras and what?
Oh yeah. The focus was just like, you know, all the damage to Lindell's house was always on that right side of the house, that right front corner of the porch. And so he wanted 3 cameras was to be facing that way.
You said you heard some light grumbling.
Right.
The question is, the grumbling was between Mr. Lindell Lewis and who?
And his neighbor.
All right. The person that you saw driving
The person that I saw driving up.
And did you hear then Mr. Lindell say anything derogatory toward that person?
Oh yeah, he said it, but I mean,
I'm just asking you, did he say something derogatory?
Yes, he did.
And could you tell us what it is he said?
I mean, I can't really remember. I know it wasn't nice.
Things got heated on cross-examination when the defense asked Sibley if he was aware of the people living in the victim's basement suffering from drug addictions.
The people that were down in that basement.
But I'm not telling you nothing. But I'm not telling you nothing that you didn't already know.
Mr. Sibley. Terrence Sibley, look at me. Sir, I'm speaking to you. When there's an objection, you will not answer. Everything he said after the objection is stricken from the record. The jury is ordered to disregard whatever Mr. Sibley was just saying is non-responsive and come to sidebar.
The witness admits he spent time in jail for drug charges. The defense then used his own personal knowledge to ask him hypotheticals, like if he believed that those people living in the basement could have owed their drug dealers big bucks, alluding that possibly the drug dealers could have set fire on the house.
Drug dealers sometimes will front people drugs and they'll owe them money, correct?
Yes.
In other words, the addict sometimes, if they have a relationship with a drug dealer, they can try and get the drug dealer to give them some up front and then they'll owe them some money, correct?
Yes, sir.
Drug dealers don't take very kindly to not getting repaid. Is that fair?
Probably not.
Mel, but did the defense seem to make any headway in the questioning if the people who lived in the victim's basement owed money to a drug dealer?
I don't think so. From the standpoint of there has been very clear animosity between the neighbors themselves and the defendant. So suddenly, like, this drug dealer is going to enter the frame when there's been a long-term drama or beef between the two groups. That doesn't make sense. That flies in the face of common sense. And whenever you want to successfully persuade a jury, you've got to appeal to common sense. It's got to make sense. It's got to pass muster. So I think the jury is going to see this as a last-ditch attempt to try to stir, take that glare, that gaze off of their client and move it towards someone else.
Absolutely.
I think they'll see through it.
All right, we'll see how that plays out. Of course, that seems to be their strongest and only defense so far. Terry, Ford has an interesting and complicated past. With him facing the death penalty, do you think his checkered past could help or hurt him?
I actually think his checkered past could help him if, in fact, what his defense is saying is true, that he has dementia and that he has brain injuries, then that could be viewed as developmental disabilities. And the U.S. Supreme Court has actually said that someone who has a developmental disability can't be sentenced to death. So this could actually help him.
Yeah, this might be a sentencing issue rather than guilt to face. Thank you both. And thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.